Hello everyone and welcome to my Decorative Quilter 2's Block of the Month program. This is our second series in a series of blocks to create a completed quilt. This is block 4 of 12 in our second series, and it's our 3D flower block. And it was created for you by Rita Gizzard and presented by myself, Mark Garretts. I am a National Floriani educator. As I always like to do before we get started with the software and the construction details of the project, I want to show you a picture of what the finished block is going to look like. You can see this is the basic block that we've been working on for the last 3 blocks of the series, except in the center of this one we have some 3D organza flowers, and these are created by stitching them out on organza fabric with using our wet and gone water-soluble stabilizer. Rinse the stabilizer away and you're left with a 3D flower, and we took 3 of them and put them in the center of the block. So let's go ahead and get started with the software portion of our lesson today. Normally when you open the software and you don't either click New Design or Open a Design, you get this big gray screen here that you can't really do anything with. And normally what we do is we would come up here and we would click a new page, and that would give us a nice blank work area to work on. This time we're going to do things a little bit differently, and we're going to start by opening a design. So we're going to do that right here by clicking the Open a Design icon, and you're going to want to navigate to our November 2015 folder, or wherever you stored the basic block for BOM file that we created in the very first lesson of this series. And you want to open the WAF version, so go ahead and select it and click Open, and that's going to bring it into our software, and we can now work with this particular block here. I'm going to go ahead and turn on 3D mode, and just so you can see the stitch lines a little bit better. So we've got 3D turned on here now. And the next thing we want to do is we want to set up our work area. And we want to do that by right-clicking on the top ruler bar here. And as we go through this lesson, if I want you to just left-click, I'm simply going to say click. If I want you to right-click, I'm going to say right-click. So I want you to put the cursor anywhere on the top ruler bar here and right-click to bring up the little menu. Check to see that you're in inches. You want to be showing the grid, and snap to grid needs to be checked. If any of those are unchecked, you want to check them, then return to this window and finally come down and click Grid Settings. We're going to change our horizontal and vertical grid settings from whenever you have them to. Mine are on 0.5 right now. We're going to change them to 0.125. So I'm going to change that first one, the horizontal, to 0.125. And I'm going to come down and select my second one and change to 0.125. Then over here in our grid major, horizontal and vertical, we want both of those to be 22. So I'm going to change the top one to 22. I'm going to change the bottom one to 22 and click OK. And that's going to give us a nice tight grid. The next thing what we want to do is we want to zoom into the center here very close, because we're going to put in a little set of crosshair stitches so that we know where to put our flowers down on the finished block. So to do that, we're going to use our zoom window here. This is our numerical zoom control, and I'm going to click the down arrow, and I'm going to zoom way into 600%, which is the last selection. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and now we've zoomed way into the center here. And now we're going to stitch our crosshair. To do that, we're going to use a run stitch. So I'm going to click the run stitch icon right here, and we are going to come over to our properties box, and we're going to change our stitch length to 5 millimeters. So I'm going to come in here and change it to 5 and click apply. And the next thing I want to do is select a color for my stitches, and I'm going to use color number 2, which should already be in here because of the rest of the design. So I'm going to select color number 2 from my color palette, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a series of clicks, and what we're going to do is we're going to click in the center. We're going to come up one division right here and click. Now you don't need to get directly on there because snap to grid is turned on, and that means it's going to snap right to the intersection of those 2 grid lines. Come back down to the center and click, come out to the right and click, back to the center and click, down to the bottom and click, back to the center, and finally out to the left and click, and back to the center, and then right click to tell it that we are done. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a tack down for our 3D flower. So in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and we are going to first zoom out. So let me double click the magnifying glass to zoom out so you can see the whole design here. We're going to come up here to our decor icon. So we're going to use one of the built-in decors to create that centerpiece for the flower. So I'm going to go ahead and click the decor icon, and you want to find decor number FQD HME001. So I'm going to scroll down to my H's here, and I'm almost there. Here it is, FQD HME001. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and that's going to come in. You notice it's not centered though. So what we want to do is we want to center it in the center of our design. To do that, we're going to come right up here to our center tool and click that, and it's going to center it in the design window. Since our rest of our design was centered, this one snapped right to the center. Now in the sequence view, we're going to come over here, and we've got three parts to this design. We have the white, we have the blue Pacific, and the red. So what you want to do is click the red circle, and we're going to actually get rid of that, and we're going to delete that by coming up over here and clicking our cut icon. So we're going to go ahead and cut that out. So the next thing we want to do is we want to come over to our sequence view, and we've got an item here. It's the last item in the sequence view. It's this Floriani Poly 372 Blue Pacific. If it's not already expanded, go ahead and click the plus icon to expand it, and then scroll all the way down to the bottom and click on the very last run. And then come up to the second one, hold down the control key. You can't see that I'm doing it, but I'm holding down the control key, and click on the next one up, and then come up one more and control click on that one, and that will have selected all three of those items. And what we want to do with those is we want to change the color of them to white, and that's already here in our color palette. So come over here to number 6 and click that, and that's actually going to change the color of them to white and separate them out as a separate item. And that's the only part of this blue thing we want to keep. So we're going to scroll up to the top here, and we are going to select this entire blue item by clicking the top level of it, and then we are going to delete it by clicking our cut icon. All right, now the next thing we need to do is we need to click on the very first white item, which is right here, and we need to expand the size of that. So what we want to do is come up to our transform tab and click that, and it's currently at 0.52, and we want to make it 0.9. Before you start changing anything, make sure you're in inches and make sure maintain aspect ratio is checked. Because maintain aspect ratio is checked, we only have to change one of the two. So I'm going to change the top one, the width. I'm going to type in 0.9, and you can see that the bottom one automatically changes to match it. And I'm going to go ahead and click apply, and that's going to make that nice and big. And now what we need to do is we need to save this file in our WAF format and also in our machine format. Normally we'd come up here and we'd simply click the save icon, but since we started by opening up another block, we don't want to do that. If we click the save icon, it's going to overwrite our basic block and have all this other stuff in here. That's not necessarily, the end of the world, because you could come in here and delete it and resave it as the basic block. But instead of doing that, what we're going to do is we're going to come up here and click File, and then click Save As instead. And instead of being in the November 2015 folder, we want to come and find our February 2016 folder, which is right here, and we're going to save this now. Instead of basic block for BOM, we're going to change the name of it, and we are going to change it to 3D flower block 4 of 12. Okay, so we're going to change it, save it as that. So we're going to click Save. And then we need to save it one more time as our machine file format. So this time we're going to come and click File, Save As. We've already in the right directory. This time you want to drop down and change it to the machine format that you're going to use. For example, you could change it to the Baby Lock Brother PES version 9 format and click Save, and then that's the file that you would take over to your machine and stitch. Now, the next thing we need to do is get ready for our next design, because we're going to create two designs. So we want to come up and right click on the ruler bar one more time, and this time we are going to uncheck Snap to Grid. So that's going to be unchecked, because in our next design we're not going to do that. So now we're going to create our 3D flower block. You can go ahead and close this design if you want. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we're going to click the new icon to get a whole new page. And we are going to again use a built-in decor. So I'm going to click the decor icon, and I am going to choose FQD FX004, which is right here at the bottom. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to come in. Now you'll notice that again that is not centered on our screen. Again, we're going to come up and click our center icon to center it on our screen. And what we want to do now, while it's selected, is we want to transform this, because we want to make this a lot bigger. So what we're going to do is come over to our properties box, click the transform tab, and this time we're going to transform using the percentages. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to type in 375%. And again, maintain aspect ratio should be checked because we just did that. And go ahead and click Apply. All right, now I'm going to double click the zoom tool to zoom in so we can see what we're going to work on here. Now we are going to need to remove some elements of the design. I'm going to click off it so you can see a little bit what's going on. We've got these elements right here in the design that we want to get rid of. So if you look close, you can see that there's a couple different parts. There's this little satin stitch here, this one here, there's a piece of underlay here and another piece of underlay here. Now in your instructions you've got some places it shows you to click, and sometimes you're going to delete one item there and sometimes you're going to click two items there. So let's take this top one as an example here on the right. So this first one down here on the bottom, this is one where we're only going to delete one item. So we're going to click, and unfortunately I've still got it grouped. I apologize, you have to ungroup it. Okay, so let me click off it again. And you're going to click this item right here, and then you're going to press the delete key on your keyboard to delete it. So that's an example of deleting one item. And then over here we're going to delete two items. So we're going to click that satin stitch and delete it, and then we want to come in and we want to carefully click on the underlay stitch that's still hanging out there and delete that. Now you can see there's still a little bit of underlay hanging out here. We're going to come back and clean those up in another step. Now that's the way it shows you to do it in the instructions, but I'm going to show you a shortcut way to do it, and that's by using your selection box to select all three items we want to delete at the same time. So I'm going to come out here to the bottom left of this one, because that's a good place to start where it's nice and blank. And I'm going to click and I'm going to drag my cursor to drag a little box, making sure I get around those objects, and let off the mouse, and it's going to select those three. And now if I click delete, it's going to delete everything. Okay, so that's a really much shorter, faster way to do it. So I'm going to do the same thing down here. Going to drag a box around just those items and delete. This one I want to start up here at the top, and I'm going to drag a box around them, and I'm going to click delete, and you can see down here I did not quite get all of them, so let me just select that one and delete it manually. And let's try it up here. I'm going to start up here in this corner, and I don't think I did it right. No, it looks like I got it okay. And I'm going to go ahead and click delete, and yeah, I got both of them. Okay, so that's the shortcut way of doing it. Now we're going to get rid of these little tails here. We're going to start with this one up here. We're going to select it, Now, we can't just delete it because it's part of a much longer piece of underlay that we need to keep. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to remove some of the points that create this little tail out here. And to do that, what we're going to do is come over here to our shape icon and click it. And now you can see the points that make up this line of underlay. And we want to get rid of these last 2 points. So again, I'm going to click and carefully drag a box just around those 2 points. It's going to select them, and I'm going to press the delete key on my keyboard. Now, it doesn't go away right away, but when I click, oh, it's really gone. It's just still there on the screen. If I come and click the second one over here, you can see that that little tail did go away over here. So I'm just going to carefully redo that for each one of these little tails. So I'm going to come and click the next tail down here, and I'm going to start out here, and I'm going to carefully draw a box. Now you want to make sure you just get those 2 points inside the box and press the delete button. I'm going to repeat with this one here. Okay, this time I'm going to start out here to the lower right and drag a box around. I may not have got them both. I did. That's great. Okay, and I'm going to click delete on my keyboard, and I'm going to select this last little tail here, start up here at the top, drag a box around. Now you see what I've got here? I've got a box that's got too many points in it, so I just have to be very careful to only get that middle, those end 2 points. I didn't want to accidentally select that one, and so I'm going to click delete one more time, click anywhere in the design, and it's going to get rid of it. The very last thing we need to do is we need to get rid of this little spot here in the center, and I'm going to click my select tool, and I'm just going to come and click it, and I'm going to delete that by pressing the delete button. I should have done that in the very first step, but I missed it. I realized I missed it, so the instructions will tell you to do it in the proper order. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create some run stitches that are the placement lines for where we're going to put our flower fabric down, our organza flower fabric. And we're basically going to draw those around these petals in the center. So we're going to draw this continuous line, and this is actually really digitizing. So we're going to do a little bit of digitizing in this, and you're going to see just how easy it is to do. Now, I'm going to bring up an overlay on my screen right now. You won't see this in the software, but I can do this through the magic of video. So now you can see this overlay, and this is a picture of what's in your instructions. And you can see that there's a green dot in the center, there's a bunch of little blue dots, and there's a few red dots. Now these red dots are squares. These are where we're going to click to draw our line. Now, you know, this is just kind of a suggestion. You don't have to be exactly in these spots. If you're anywhere close to them, it's going to work. And you'll see as I go around and do this that it's not going to be that precise. But the important thing to remember here is that there's 2 different ways we're going to click. One is with a control click, and that's with me holding down the control button while I click. And there's going to be other places where I click where I'm going to let off the control button and just do a regular left click. Okay, so control click, when we're in this drawing mode, it puts in a curved line. And you can see there's a lot of curves here. When we put in a click without holding down control, it puts in a straight point line. And we need to be able to do that because when we change angles, we, like for example, in this in the points of the petal, we need to make sure that we have straight lines there, otherwise the curve won't look right. So in your diagram, you can see there's blue dots and red dots. The blue dots represent a control click. The red dots represent just a regular click. Okay, so I'm going to take my overlay away now, and we're going to go ahead and start digitizing these lines. Now, we're going to start here in the center, and we're going to click around these petals. Now, snap to grid is not turned on, so as you click, it's not going to automatically snap to the center. But as long as you get real close to the center, it's going to be close enough. So let's start by selecting our run stitch icon. Next thing we're going to do is come over to our properties, and we're going to click a stitch length of 4. So I'm going to change it to 4 and click apply. And then we want to select a color. So I'm going to come down here to this old gold color here and click it. and it doesn't matter what color, just any color will do. And then we're going to come up and we're going to start putting in our lines. So our very first click is going to be a control click. So I'm going to do that, and we're going to continue to control click around this petal. And you can see that as I click sort of in the center of this petal here, it's going to curve automatically. Now this is my very next click. I'm going to come back up here, and this is the first click where I'm not going to do a control click. So I'm going to hold off the control, and I'm going to just do a regular left click, and then I'm going to push control again because I'm going to control click all the way around the rest of this petal. So I'm going to continue to control click all the way into my center. And now here's my next non-control click. I want to do a non-control, just a regular left click right here, and then I'm going to hold down control again. So you can see how this works. They're all basically going to be the same. Just going to follow along the petal, and this is digitizing. Okay, I'm going to come right here into the center, and I'm going to click, and now here's my next non-control click, and then I'm going to hold down control again and continue to go around. And this is all there is to digitizing, folks. One time there, control click here. Now here's my next non-control click. So I'm going to do right there. I'm going to hold down control again, holding down control all the way around. You can see I don't have to get super close on these points. Come down in here to the center. Here's my next non-control click. Got control again. Keep clicking around. I know this is a little bit tedious, but it doesn't really take that long. Get into the center, pretty close. Again, non-control click right here. Hold down control for the rest of them. Okay, coming around. One more click down here and right here, and now another non-control click. More controls. We're getting almost to the end here. Over here, back to our center. Non-control click here. Okay, coming all the way around on our last petal. Down here, non-control click, and back to control for the rest of them. And one last click in the center. Okay, and when you are done, then you want to right click, and that's going to create those stitches for us. All right, so once we've done that, we are going to create our tack down stitches out of them. So if we come over to our sequence view, I'm going to collapse the top item by clicking the little minus icon right here, and you can see here's our outline that we just drew. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to click that outline, and we're going to make a copy of it. So I'm going to click copy and then paste, and now I've got two of them, and my second one is automatically selected, but I want that to be a different color. So I'm going to come over here and let's select this Navajo orange here, and that's now another color. And we're putting the color change in basically so the machine stops. But this is also going to be our tack down stitch. So we want to change the type of stitch from our regular one. We want to change it from a single run into a bean stitch. We also want to come in here and change to a 2mm stitch length and click apply. And that's going to give us a nice tight tack down stitch there. And the last thing we need to do is, if we were to stitch this out right now, all our satin stitches would stitch first, and then we'd have our placement and our tack down, and we want to reverse that. Okay, so what we're going to do is select the top item, and we're going to right click on it, and from the menu that comes up, there's one called move. So go ahead and move your cursor over that. A little menu pops out telling us where we want to move to. Go ahead and click last, and it's going to put it down there on the last. item in our sequence view, and so now it's going to stitch out in the right order. So the only thing that remains to do now is we need to actually save this. So this is a new one that we started, so we can start out with our save icon, and we're going to call this one 3D flower. Okay, so this is just our 3D flower. So we're going to type in 3D flower, and we're going to save that in the WAF format. So I'm not going to change the format, I'm just going to click save. And then we need to save it one more time in our machine format. So I'm going to click File, Save As, and we're going to change the type. Again, let's use the PES format and click Save. And that completes the software section of this video. So let's go over the materials that you require for this month's block. You're going to need some batting. You have a choice of either Floriani Quilted Soft Bamboo Cotton Blend batting, or you can use Floriani Embroidery batting. You're going to need some Floriani Nylon No-Show Mesh Stabilizer, some Floriani Wet and Gone Stabilizer, that's our water soluble. You're going to need some embroidery and bobbin thread, and you want to choose top thread colors that work well with your fabric choices. You're going to need some R&K Embroidery Perfection tape, that's the pink tape, and to stitch this out you're going to need a minimum of a 6" by 6" or 150mm by 150mm hoop size. So let's go over the fabric details for this month's block. In the batting you're going to need 4 5.5" squares. For fabric A, you're going to need 4 4 3/8" squares for the centerpiece. Fabric B and C, you're going to need 4 4" squares of each, and each one of those is going to be cut in half diagonally to create the corner pieces. So you're going to end up with a total of 8 pieces for fabric B and 8 pieces for fabric C. Fabric D, you're going to need 12 4.5" squares of organza for the flowers. These quantities make 4 blocks, so all 4 blocks. And for the complete project fabric list, see the info guide that was included with the November 2015 download. So before we start embroidering, it's important to note that most of the color changes in this design are there to make the machine stop between the steps, so we can do things like put various pieces of fabric down, etc. You can leave the same thread color in, or you can change it if you want, that's up to you. But if you have a multi-needle machine, it's important that you use the machine controls on the machine to insert stop commands to make the machine stop between the colors when necessary. Otherwise, it's just going to continue on to the next color, and you're not going to be able to put your fabric down or what you need to do to the things that are in the hoop. So let's start embroidering. So the first thing you want to do is load the 3D flower design into your machine. Hoop a piece of Floriani Wet and Gone Stabilizer, make sure it's nice and tight. Attach the hoop to the machine and stitch out the first color, which will be the placement line showing us where to put the organza fabric down. Next you want to place an organza square, that's fabric D, over the placement lines and secure the corners with R&K Embroidery Perfection tape. Then you want to stitch out the next color to tack down the fabric. Next you want to remove the hoop from the machine and trim the organza close as you can to the stitches, and then go ahead and replace the hoop in the machine. Stitch the next color, which is going to stitch out the satin stitches, and remove the flower design from the hoop, and then you want to repeat this procedure to make a total of 12 flowers, so 3 flowers for each of the 4 blocks. To finish up the flowers, you want to trim the Wet and Gone pretty close to the satin stitches. Doesn't have to be really close, we're just removing the excess stabilizer. And then you want to rinse the flowers in some warm water to remove the stabilizer. Now if you have hard water, it's important to add a cup of a water softener like Calgon water softener, not their fabric softener, to the water. And lastly, you want to shape the flower over a round surface such as a small bowl and allow it to dry. Once your flowers are dry, we're going to start embroidering the rest of the design. So you'll want to load the 3D flower block 4 of 12 design into your machine. Hoop up a piece of Floriani Nylon No-Show Mesh Stabilizer, get it nice and tight, and attach the hoop to the machine. Stitch out the first color, which will be the placement line for the batting. Place the square of batting within the placement lines, secure the corners with Embroidery Perfection tape, and then go ahead and stitch out the next color, which will be the placement lines for our fabric. Center fabric A within the lines, right side up. Place your fabric B triangles along the placement lines as shown here, right sides down on the center of the fabric, and then stitch out the next two colors to tack down the triangles. Press open the two corner triangles and place your fabric C triangles along the other placement lines, again right sides down on the center of the fabric, and then stitch out the next two colors to tack down these triangles. Press open the two corner triangles, remove the embroidery perfection tape, and then change the top thread to the color you want for the quilting stitches if necessary. Stitch out the next color, which will be the quilting stitches, and then follow that by stitching out the next color, which will make the cutting guidelines, and then lastly stitch out the next color for the crosshairs. Stack the flowers slightly askew and center them on the crosshairs. Back the machine up to the previous color and stitch out the crosshairs again to secure the flowers. Change the thread color to the thread you used for the flowers, or if you want you can use a contrasting color because this is going to end up being the thread for the center of the flowers, and you want to go ahead and stitch out that last color, and then you want to repeat the whole process to make a total of 4 blocks. So that completes the construction section of this month's project. We want to thank everybody for attending. We hope you'll use this video along with the printed PDF instructions to recreate this project at home. Come on back next month for the next installment of the series, and don't forget to post your blocks on the Floriani Embroidery Facebook page so you get a chance to win a prize for the best looking blocks and the best looking quilt at the end of the series.